Let's take a look at this 9-year-old crafting kit party supply and mousepad Amazon FBA business, making $1,742,000 per year in profit and listed for sale at an asking price of $2,625,000 plus inventory. The broker includes a detail here of low multiple, and if we math it out, asking price divided by earnings, we will see that it works out to be a 1.5x valuation multiple. Is this business worth that 1.5x valuation multiple? Well, I'm going to go through the listing here, pick out some of the key details, share some of my own experience-based insight into this business model and businesses like it in the key details, things you might want to consider or flesh out if you're interested in acquiring this business, and ultimately share with you my take on the business's valuation. All right, so let's jump into it, and let's start by focusing on the asking price and the plus inventory detail here, and also the low multiple, because with e-commerce businesses, inventory can be a big deal, and typically it is not included in the asking price. And my opinion of why brokers do this is just so they can have a lower asking price to make it more competitive, because they know a lot of people kind of skim by looking at the profitability to the asking price. In other words, the valuation multiple. They skim listings and they're looking for low multiple businesses here. All right. So right here it says $2,625,000 plus inventory. But if we click on the Inquire Now, which I did, and mind you, I have not gone through the details of this listing, but I did just open up the Inquire Now because I was going to discuss it from the actual broker's page so I can use my little annotation tool. But when I went to the broker's page, I saw the asking price $4,375,000. It does not include the plus inventory notation. And up here in the title, we don't see the low multiple. So possibly they, just kind of said, all right, well, we'll subtract inventory from the valuation and send out another email and put the note in there of low multiple. I don't know if that is the case, but, kind of 1 plus 1 is adding up to that is the case here, right? There's no more low multiple, or there was not originally low multiple, and there was no plus inventory. So if we work from that, we would consider inventory to be worth $1.7 million. The business is doing revenue of $4,798,000. So we don't know if that's book value. We don't know if that estimate is right. But if it is, we also don't know if it's book value or if it's retail value. Anyhow, for a business of this size, it would not be unrealistic to see them claiming inventory worth $1,700,000. So first thing, when it comes to these e-commerce businesses that are plus inventory, you really, really have to smoke out what the inventory is actually worth. Let's just kind of look at things in the context of not including the inventory, right? In the context of a 1.5x valuation on the business's earnings plus inventory, that's something you can flesh out and negotiate out later. Let's go further down here, and I'm going to enable my annotation tool, and I like it being pink. I find the pink color just kind of works well across all web pages that you're working on here. Starting from the top, in the title, they say well reviewed with 37% net margins, and 37% net margins is relatively high, in my opinion, for an Amazon FBA business, particularly one that is doing this revenue. It's not uncommon to find little niches, right, where they're doing like $500,000 a year in revenue and doing a 37% net margin. So keep that in mind here. What else do we got? Note about the listing. Okay, it's unique that they start off with note about this listing. We typically don't see this here right at the top. It's usually starting off with something like this since 2016. Anyways, after running the business for 10 years, the sellers have reached a point where their motivation to scale further has naturally tapered off. They're fortunate to now be in a position where they are financially comfortable and able to pursue other dreams and goals that they have put aside over the years. They're selling this business at a low multiple to attract cash buyers who see the value of what they've built over the last 10 years. Since 2016, the business has designed and sold party supplies, craft kits, and decorations for birthdays, graduations, and other occasions. In 2019, they launched a new brand and expanded into Mousepads, the sales of which now contribute 60% of revenue. Mousepads, 60% of revenue. Not my best work on the annotator tool there. Everything is sold through Amazon FBA. The business has thousands of strong Amazon reviews and boasts net margins of over 35%. Party supply market is big. That's really not relevant to us. The business competes with original designs, higher quality, strong branding, and by bundling items into complete kits. In addition, they do compliance testing for international markets, which generates them from more generic competitors. With this business, a buyer has the opportunity to own a creative business with an international footprint and high margins. A new owner with knowledge of Amazon and experience managing suppliers will be able to grow this business in any direction they want, including expanding to other marketplaces, particularly the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Japan, expanding the new product line with new themes and occasions such as weddings, can tap into existing demand. Additional mouse pads that target different software could be operated. The business runs with a lean team, spending a total of 30 to 40 hours per week. With its healthy margin, you could hire additional staff or a general manager. Okay, there was a lot here, and it kind of took a unique turn at this paragraph. And I'll tell you why first. Actually, first, let me just talk about what I like. I like that it's 10 years old. I like that they've got diversified revenue streams. I like the margin. And then down here, I like this paragraph. And this was really kind of throwing, I don't want to say a curveball because that implies something negative, but throwing a fast curveball or a curveball you can easily hit into the mix because it seemed to make some differentiation. I typically don't like Amazon FBA businesses at all because they're platform dependent on Amazon and they are typically just kind of like one generic product that they got to win on Amazon and now they want to unload it here. What I'm hearing in this paragraph is that they've got original designs, they've got bundles into complete kits, and they do some type of compliance testing that makes their product a little bit more differentiated than people that are just throwing mouse pads and party supplies at the wall. I would really want to look at how much value these complete kits add and how difficult it would be for somebody else to spin up in this space. It's certainly going to add a little bit of differentiation, but really the quality of the kits and how much differentiation there is would be a telling sign. Now, the business is generating 60% of revenue from Mousepads. Are the Mousepads part of the kits? We don't know. That's something I would really want to know. Do the Mousepads have a kit? Right? I don't really know how. I don't know how you'd make a mousepad into a kit. I just think you buy a mousepad, you don't get a kit, right? If I buy a mousepad, I don't use a mousepad. I just use my mouse on the desk. But if I did, I don't know what I'd want to come with that. Yeah, so I would ultimately want to smoke out how robust this product is and differentiated. That would be something you would really want to know. And then with that, what are the reviews like? It says strong reviews, thousands. I'm going to assume that they're pretty good because it's not that hard to make a good mouse pad, but having those built up is valuable. All right, that's what you don't get. And that's what you don't get when you're starting new, and that's what you get when you're buying an Amazon business. Now, I mentioned Amazon businesses are platform dependent, and they are. Amazon can squeeze you, by taking more of a haircut from your revenue, making it more difficult to comply with their FBA standards by increasing their charges for Amazon FBA, by adding their own product line in to compete with you, by diminishing your organic reach and driving more of the placement in your category to paid advertisers. So for all those reasons, I typically don't like Amazon businesses, but they do make sense at the right valuation multiple. Now, on the flip side, the bull case behind getting an Amazon business at the right valuation multiple is that you can take the product off Amazon. You've already got that proven product market fit. You've got the distribution and infrastructure behind it. So now you can take it off Amazon and start driving customers to your own website and making sales there. Doing that is typically going to require advertising spend. In this case, they've got 37% net margins already, and they don't mention anything about advertising in the listing that I see, so I'm going to assume they're not doing any advertising, right? They're just platform dependent on Amazon organic for their sales, but you still got 37% margin here. You do have a little bit of room to work with advertising. I can't imagine that in the mousepad niche, advertising costs are very high. So there is opportunity there. That is really the bull case with these Amazon businesses. Get them chugging off Amazon. You get a nice revenue stream here on Amazon that you've got to sustain for 1.5x years, assuming the valuation multiple, that we're looking at here. And the bull case is that you get it running on Amazon. So on that note, is it worth the 1.5x valuation multiple? Before I share my analysis, let me know in the comments what you think. Is this business worth that 1.5x valuation multiple plus inventory? Now, my take on it here is that I would assign a valuation multiple to the business unit as it is, as you're buying it, and then multiply that out by the forecasted or projected income that it would generate in the next 12 months. And a substantial part of that is looking at the revenue trend and seeing where things are going. Is the revenue trending up? Is it looking like it's going to grow 10% by simply doing nothing? It's always nice to buy businesses in that case. Or is the revenue trending down? Has it gone down 10% in the last year? Maybe it went down 5% in the year before, 10%, in the next year, and it's safe to forecast out a 20% decline in revenue going forward. For this business here, a pretty well-established Amazon business doing high numbers, I think that it's reasonable to assign, and by doing high numbers, I mean, doing a sustainable margin. If this business has indeed been stable, I would say that it's not far-fetched to say it could be worth a 2.5x valuation multiple, excluding inventory. You really have to understand what the product is here and how robust the product is itself, and what the trend has been. If this product is relatively stable and it's just not hella volatile, or maybe it, didn't just spike up in the last year or something. If it's relatively stable, a 2.5x valuation multiple is not, not unreasonable if the seller is patient. It's not unreasonable for the seller to expect that. In this case, it seems like they want to liquidate, or they're motivated. You certainly want to flesh out the reason and get your own comprehensive understanding of whether they're selling because they just want to check out and move on and collect a nice multi-million-dollar asking price, or if it's because they see the business is going to get worse. So yeah, I think a 2.5x valuation multiple, not unreasonable. At 1.5x, I think this business will trade. The only caveat to that is this inventory thing here. The inventory, right? Because you've got crafting kits, party supplies, and Mousepads. I'm not hearing anything there that is really difficult to produce with a just-in-time production model. So I don't see the need for this business to hold $1,700,000 of inventory, assuming that they have not, changed the basis of the actual business valuation between this $4.375 million and the $2.625 million. All right, going back to the beginning, I was talking about how, when we come over here, we see the differences of no inventory and no low multiple, right? Assuming they're just changing the positioning of the business, and how they're marketing it here, I would assume, or that would imply, that there's $1.7 million of inventory needed. I don't see the need for that much inventory in this business. Maybe I'm missing something, but you should be able to get mouse pads pretty quick. Hell, I think there's even print-on-demand mouse pads. Why is this business not doing that? Maybe it has something to do with this compliance testing. I don't know what kind of compliance you need for a mouse pad, but maybe they need that. I don't know. Anyhow, I don't see this business requiring that much inventory. Because if we, assume that the inventory is really their only cost, right, let's just say the inventory is 55%, right? So $4,800,000 is their revenue. Is that the right number? Yeah, I had it right there. Times 0.55 for their cost of inventory. They're spending on inventory $2,640,000 a year. I would say that, it's maybe only necessary for them to keep 2 months of inventory on hand. So divide that by 6. I would say that, a reasonable inventory requirement here is $440,000. If that's the case, right, $2,625,000 plus $440,000, I think this is a very well valued and very fairly valued business, as it is here. If the seller is expecting to get $1,700,000 for inventory, then it doesn't look so attractive, because I think that realistically speaking here, the inventory for this business should not be that high. If it is, you're certainly going to want to flesh out why is it that high. And then when it comes down to actually acquiring the inventory, you got to figure out what the hell you're buying. Are you buying $1.5 million hypothetically of crafting kits that don't sell, right? Like stuff that's been lingering around for 3 years since they've made this move into the mousepad business? You don't know. You don't want to buy the inventory that's not going to sell. Or if you take it, it would be on some type of earnout basis. Yeah, overall, I think this business is fairly valued, here at this multiple. The only big question is what's up with inventory. And before I call it a wrap and sign off, if you found this video helpful and insightful, you know the drill. Smash that like button to help me out in the YouTube algorithm. But where I was going with this is, I don't think the listing mentioned anything about how the inventory is being fulfilled. Yeah, it doesn't say anything about how the inventory is being fulfilled. They say the business runs with a lean team, spending 30 to 40 hours per week. With a lean team and no mention of a warehouse, I would assume that this stuff is at a 3PL or drop shipped. It can't be drop shipped if it's plus inventory, right? I mean, drop ship businesses don't have inventory. Wouldn't be print on demand. So then I'd assume this is at some type of 3PL. Where is the 3PL for this business? And it doesn't give us any details. That's certainly something we would want to understand. Overall, if you're interested in acquiring a Amazon FBA business, this seems like one that is fairly valued and would be worth a look into. What is your take on the business? If you feel like there's anything I overlooked or missed out on, let me know in the comments below. I am calling it a wrap and signing off on that note.